Randy Gregory just got cut. Should the 49ers sign him, Grant?
Let me check in on Randy Gregory. What's he been doing up for a while?
He signed a huge deal with Denver, and then they just cut him because they want to focus on younger players. So that's not, the most encouraging sign. It's not like Denver's defense has so many good players they could afford to lose people. He's 30 years old. He's
31. He's about to be 31.
2 sacks.
He's about to be 31. Bro, he's got 19 and a half sacks in his career. He has 3 sacks in the last 2 years. He's played freaking 10 games in the last 2 years. I mean, you gave him the minimum if he came for the minimum, but I just feel like he's going to be a guy who ends up on IR quick.
If you're expecting him to come in and get 10 sacks, no, you shouldn't do that. If you're saying, hey, we could use another depth piece, I don't hate it. If he's going to play for the minimum, I don't hate it.
Yeah.
But
it's a Niner move, right? It's a Niner move. Take some kind of washed up guy who had high hopes and say, hey, on this team with these running mates and Chris Kasarik, maybe, but not for a lot of money. Randy Gregory. The most he's ever had in his best year ever was a 6-sack season in 2021 for Dallas. It's 6 sacks in 12. He's never played more than 14 games in a season. Guy's been hurt all the time. He's going to be 31.
Yep.
Sure, give it a shot. Whatever.
Hurt guys get hurt.
Hurt guys get hurt. And he's older now.
Right. As you age, that just gets worse and worse. And we're in Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, hurt guys get hurt. Jimmy Garoppolo missed last week because he had a concussion. That's what happens.
It's so interesting to watch the Raiders just be like, this is so shocking. Jimmy's a winner. What's going on? Man, you really should have been paying attention the last 5 years. We could have told you this. So predictable.
It's wild to see when he drops back and those feet start moving because that first read's not I know what's gonna happen. And it's so weird to watch it now and not I can't get mad at it anymore because I don't need to because it's not on my team. It's just damn, it's just like it was.
Yeah, you remember it, the anxiety that you can feel dripping off him as the play extends. That no longer, Brock never exudes that type of anxiety. I think that's one of the best things about Brock is how confident he is at all times.
Even against Dallas, right? He may be under a ton of pressure. I don't have this feeling that he's just going to self-destruct. I have so many memories in my head of Jimmy Garoppolo not throwing the ball away, forcing it over the middle into coverage, or fumbling the ball in the backfield when he eludes 1 sack and he's trying to get away from pass rushers, which everybody in the world knows he can't do, and he throws the ball backwards. It becomes a fumble. There is none of that with Brock. Even if he's going to be under pressure, he's not going to make a bad play worse.
He hasn't so far. I think what's so impressive about Brock beyond, a lot of things are, but just how freaking prepared he was and he is. He is on it. He knows the offense. He looks like he's 35 years old in terms of a feel for what to do on the field. And the confidence of a much older man. He just has so many. He looks like he's 12, but his whole game is like he's 35. And he moves so well. He's incredible. They lucked out so much with this guy. They drafted him after Tariq Castro Fields. He was a throwaway draft pick. They were like, should we sign him as an undrafted free agent or take him with the last pick? Let's take him with the last pick because if we sign him as an undrafted free agent, he might be even more expensive and some of the team might get him. And we don't want to give him that much money. So let's just and see what happens. They're so lucky. And yeah, they get credit for, seeing something. But at the same time, they didn't see that much. This is all new to everyone.
They would have drafted him way earlier.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the greatest surprise ever for the 49ers. It's wonderful.
It's unbelievable, but it's so comforting as a 49er. Every game that passes, again, I've said I'm not going to be naming Brock Purdy a franchise quarterback because I like to see him play for 2 years. But it is every game that passes, it is more and more comforting that, my God, this is not just a fluke thing. This is not Nick Mullins. This is not this kind of Shanahan propping up somebody that doesn't do anything beyond the system. Clearly, there's something there beyond the system.
Let's compare Mullins and Brock real quick. Mullins knew the system very well, had a nice arm, and put up good numbers. But he did not have Brock's leadership, confidence, poise, and he didn't have his mobility. Like none of that.
Yeah.
None of that. Sorry.
Before we get to the super chat, there was a really interesting thing on the broadcast. Brock apparently told the Fox broadcast crew that one of the things he does and did was he studied his teammates' reactions when they weren't getting the ball. He studied them in film, on film during the game, and he studied like how they came into work, their personality, their demeanor when they weren't getting the ball coming in after a week where, somebody else went nuts. And he said basically nobody cares. Like he saw no ego, and that kind of freed him up a little bit. Like he didn't feel as much pressure to have to force the ball to Debo or Kittle or whoever because everybody seemed cool with everything that was going on. And for a 23-year-old kid to do that, that to me was pretty damn surprising.
Yeah, I mean, you can't praise Brock enough for how mature beyond his years he is. Like a lot of people are immature. Like this guy is really, 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 really mature. And it goes a long way at quarterback. I mean, you really have to carry yourself like you're a 40-year-old CEO and be above all the trappings of fame and fortune. And he seems to be so far. I mean, he's a humble. I mean, I'm not saying he's humble, but he lives with roommates. You know what I'm saying? He doesn't dress ostentatiously. He's not on social media. Like he really does carry himself like a dude who's 40 years old at 23. It's hard to find. I mean, most times you bring in a guy like, let's say Trey Lance. I don't know how mature or immature he is, but you can see how he dressed. You can see his presence on social media, and you can see him, at parties and stuff. It seemed like he had some growing up to do that Brock didn't have to do. And maybe that's why Brock hit the ground running. One of the reasons why Brock hit the ground running and Trey didn't. I don't know. But I do know that teams are looking for that extra mature quarterback at 23. Like how many people even exist like that in the world?
Yeah,
let alone in the football world.
Right. He's definitely an old soul for sure. Fonzie Gonzalez says, do you think Jimmy Garoppolo still thinks Kyle's plays suck, man? If anybody remembers that last year.
Man, someone needs to ask him that. Someone needs to ask him that.
Thinks they're pretty good.
Yup.
Did you? Oh, one thing I wanted to ask you that I noticed from Brock in the post-game presser after last game. He said it multiple times. The fact that he mentioned it more than once made a bell go off in my head. He said, everybody was really buttoned up this weekend on the details. Everybody. He specifically said that, and he mentioned it in more than one answer about how this week everybody was buttoned up. I just can't help but was he talking about somebody specific? Was there somebody that wasn't buttoned up in previous weeks? And if so, who was it?
Well, that's a good question, right? He has to be because he like Ayuk is grinding for that big come up, that big payday. Maybe there's a lot of guys on this team who've been paid, and it's early in the year. And the week before was a Thursday game, and they had a very ambitious game plan, as they talked about. They installed a lot in a very little amount of time. And the first half was really sloppy, really bad. And Brock took most of the blame for that. Now, you threw a couple of passes should have been picked. Brock, it was the worst half of football we've seen from Brock, but then he turned it around. Maybe from his perspective, it's like, we were just off as an offense entirely because some of you guys weren't as locked into the game plan as you should have been. I mean, maybe that's what he said.